Valhalla's next big reveal should happen during Ubisoft's Forward event, which is less than 2 weeks away. I've been playing through the entire Assassin's Creed series because, like many of you, I have no self-control. The only way I can feed my excitement for Valhalla is to play through every single game leading up to its release. I've just beaten Assassin's Creed 3, which many people consider to be the black sheep of the franchise. Despite some pacing and technical issues, I enjoyed the hell out of this game. I thought it'd be fun to go through a few things I liked and didn't like and how Valhalla can learn from these lessons. Let's start with a positive. I mentioned this in my last video, which covered several ways Valhalla will feel like the old Assassin's Creed, but it's worth mentioning again because I've beaten the game since then and have more to add. Davenport Homestead is brilliant through and through. This system is deeply married to the setting and the narrative, establishing a community on the frontier, recruiting craftsmen to set up shop and work off the land, investing in them and building relationships to grow the town, seeing their story arc progress bit by bit. It's honestly the single standout feature for me in Assassin's Creed 3. The thing is, I didn't explore this at all when I first played 3 back in 2012, which is a real shame. One of my biggest criticisms of Connor is that he's dead set on his mission and doesn't seem to have a softer side. While he's no Ezio, these missions show that he does. It gives another side to Connor that we don't see in the main story since he's too busy crossing Templars off of his list. From everything we've heard, Valhalla will revolve around its settlement system, even more so than the Davenport Homestead, which approaches it more like a set of side missions than a main focus for the entire game. I would love to see the craftsman concept return, people that actually have something to contribute to the community, an interesting, diverse cast of characters. I want to recruit them to my settlement. I want to support them through personal missions throughout England. I want to see some true evolution and progression within this system. While I do think that Davenport is brilliant, of course, it's aged, and Assassin's Creed 3 across the board has aged a lot, and it could be done much better with new technology. If they're able to deliver convincing performances for this new cast of characters and develop their backstories in a way that will make us care, I have really high hopes. Settlements are deeply intertwined with the narrative and Valhalla because we know Vikings survived and succeeded in England largely due to their ability to put down roots and establish settlements. If Valhalla is able to build on what AC3's Homestead did, it will be in great shape. All I know is that the more focus and attention UB gives to these systems that function in and around the settlements, the better. From what we know so far, that seems to be the case. To this day, Assassin's Creed 3 feels like a transitional game, because it was, in many ways. From a narrative perspective, it was the last game of the Desmond era and did its best to wrap up the modern-day storyline, while also setting up a new one. It came right after the Ezio trilogy, which established a visual style and aesthetic in Assassin's Creed 2 that was largely the same through Brotherhood and Revelations. Ubisoft redesigned their engine from the ground up to make Assassin's Creed 3, starting shortly after 2 came out. What resulted is Anvil Next, which produced some great-looking, technically impressive games in Black Flag and you could say Rogue as well. But it didn't on 3 because it was the first try. Look, it's not awful, but it clearly lacks the polish that Assassin's Creed 2 had several years before. For starters, cutscenes. They're uncomfortably zoomed in. At the time, the facial animation and textures didn't even justify these close-up shots. They frequently interrupt combat too. At the end of a sequence, I'll kill the last guard, and before the animation even finishes, we're launching into a cutscene. The same thing happens on the back end of cutscenes. Connor will teleport to a different task with little context. In between, we'll get black screens with T-posed characters. There's a lot of little examples here, and I realize this is nitpicking, but it's just the kind of stuff that bothers me personally. It feels sloppy and unfinished, and the fact that it's still in the remaster leads me to believe that these issues are root to the engine. It's something they can't just go and tweak without a lot of time and resources, which is unfortunate because I do think it detracts from the overall experience. Next is the UI. For the love of God, it feels like a monument to the phrase form over function, but the form is not all that great to begin with. Case in point, the weapons and tools wheels. This is a system that was not broken. In fact, it had evolved in Revelations to the dual wheel system to accommodate the sheer number of weapons and abilities at our disposal. In 3, it's a scrolling menu. It's far less efficient. The time it takes to switch tools and weapons mid-fight really sucks the air out of combat. And more often than not, this led to me sticking to a single tool or weapon per fight, which is counterintuitive to the way that combat was redesigned and reworked for this game. On to Exhibit C. What is this economy crafting menu? In order to stock up a convoy, it forces you to bounce between multiple menus to send multiple items, which is most of the time. In order to craft something, you have to look at the recipe in the crafting menu and then go back to the stockpile menu and find the items to craft. Sometimes this is a multiple step process. You have to make things in the crafting menu using things from the stockpile in order to craft things in the crafting menu. If you're confused, you should be, because it's really confusing. For as much credit as 3 deserves for its convoy trading mechanic, it is mind-blowing how frustrating the entire system is to use. Now, we haven't seen any true gameplay of Valhalla yet, which means it's hard to even speculate on how well it's going to function or how polished it's going to feel. But like I said at the beginning, I'm positive we'll get to see it during Ubisoft Forward. In terms of overall presentation, Assassin's Creed 3 feels like an anomaly for the series. Honestly, it's easy to complain about because it sticks out like a sore thumb in the context of the larger series. It's a small misstep in what is otherwise rock solid for the entire franchise. Unless we're dealing with some major leap in technology, I think we shouldn't worry about the presentation of Valhalla. When it comes to UI, function over form is almost always the better route, especially with a game that has conventions established over many years. Redesigns mean nothing if they actively detract from the systems that we've already been using. This is a video focusing on Assassin's Creed 3, but we have to mention the reboots here because they completely reworked the UI to support the RPG MMO style aesthetic. And mostly they did a good job. They adopted the Destiny style cursor menus, which support the sheer volume of items to sort through. And I'd be fine seeing this again in Valhalla because again, it works for what they're going for. We should definitely expect Valhalla to be most like Origins and Odyssey in terms of presentation, but we do know for sure that the tool wheel will return. That already makes me hopeful. I'm happy more tools are returning for gameplay, but I'm even happier they use the word wheel because it's just the most efficient way to handle it. It's safe to say that the series needed a refresh on combat after Revelations. One of the most vocal pieces of criticism for combat was how it relied on counters as the primary solution to any situation. Why would you dodge or disarm? Because the best way to succeed in any fight was to chain assassinate. It was flashy, but it required little skill from the player. AC3 addresses this by switching to a 2-button system and increasing the variety of enemies who can't be countered and instant killed. It wasn't the most elegant solution though, since the majority still could be counter killed, but it forces us to rely on more tools, which I always enjoy. Enemies also stopped standing around and waiting for their turn, which broke up Connor's ability to chain assassinate, making those moments that more satisfying. Seriously, when you were able to queue up 2 or more enemies in one animation, it wasn't skillful, but it was awesome to see. From a technical perspective, it's still a clunky mess. The way the camera swings around annoys me so much, and it often feels like Connor is moving at 50% speed. I can appreciate slowing down combat and making it more tactical, but not this slow. While there are some issues with combat in 3, I've always appreciated how it feels in this game. Connor is still the biggest, most physically intimidating assassin to date, and that comes through in the gameplay. Animations are brutal and weighty, particularly with the tomahawk. The way Connor regularly knocks enemies off their feet to the ground. He shrugs their dead bodies over his back. Oh, and this animation where he literally form tackle assassinates enemies when he's chaining together assassinations, he uses the fact that he's bigger than most of his enemies to his advantage. While it can feel a bit too easy at times, there are flashes of excellence, where the animations chain together for what was undoubtedly a very impressive display at the time. And within the context of the Assassin's Creed series, 3 has some of the most distinctive gameplay. It's by no means perfect for the reasons I've mentioned, but I love that Connor feels powerful and more deliberate than most other assassins. When you think of the most terrifying terrifying warriors in history, without a doubt, Vikings come to mind first. We don't know how big Eivor will be, but we know that Ubi wanted that power fantasy to come through the language that they've used. We've heard them describe combat as crunchy and visceral. Weight and feedback is going to be core to delivering an authentic Viking experience for Ubisoft, and that's why we see things like decapitation and dismemberment possible in the game. It's safe to say that some weightiness has been lost in the last couple games. Protagonists can feel like they're floating over surfaces, and some of the combat abilities make them feel more like superheroes than anything. I'm very excited to see how combat will feel in Valhalla, because from what we know, it'll be more grounded than ever. It's very popular to criticize the pacing and story structure of Assassin's Creed 3. The prologue with ๊eɪvɔːr, while I love the content and appreciate the detail for what it is self-contained within those two sequences, it is just too long. It reminds me of how every single Spider-Man reboot feels the need to retell its origin story with Peter and Uncle Ben. While it's easier to appreciate the length of ๊eɪvɔːr's sequence in the larger context of the Kenway saga, it doesn't land within the context of this single game. Perhaps they could have shown us ๊eɪvɔːr's rise to power in the colonies through flashbacks instead. It would have made things feel a little less lopsided. I also have a problem with the linearity of the first two sequences. The open world feels empty as ๊eɪvɔːr. You can't do much beyond the main plot, but nobody tells you that. I ended up exploring a lot of Boston without having much to do. The first two sequences are this half-linear, half-open format, which continues with Connor for another several hours. However, what almost makes it pay off is the amazing bait and switch. We so desperately want ๊eɪvɔːr to be an assassin that when it's revealed he's actually a Templar, it's a shock to the system. Still, to this day, I knew it was coming, but it blew me away. But again, this comes at a price, because playing as ๊eɪvɔːr for too long leads to further pacing issues. There's essentially a second prologue for Connor, but filled with even more fluff than ๊eɪvɔːr's. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I did not want to play hide and seek after playing 7 hours of this game. I have to agree with a lot of people that this game doesn't truly begin until the end of Sequence 5, when Connor gets his robes. Now, I know some of you must be thinking, what about Assassin's Creed 2? It is an origin story. There's a lengthy prologue in that game too. I think it's just better executed. For one thing, we're in control of the main character, Ezio, from the very beginning. It takes less than half the time to get to the full experience. He gets his robes quickly, and we dive right into the action. There are more pacing issues that we don't have the time to address in this video, but I felt the need to mention the modern day plot. While it's given more attention in 3, the execution is so weak that it feels tacked on last minute. We're yanked out of the Animus every few sequences, which breaks the pacing of Connor's story. And that wouldn't matter much to me if there was something worth seeing in the modern day. Every Desmond section offers no unique mechanics and scales back on depth. I've said before that I love the idea of the modern day Animus plotline, but I think it's given so little care that it's hard to justify it even existing. I'm glad I saw Desmond's story through to the end, but I can't say it was done particularly well. I mean, William getting captured, Daniel Cross showing up out of nowhere. This guy is as convincing a villain as Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. Valhalla will be introducing new characters like every single Assassin's Creed game. And surely by this point, Ubisoft has learned their lesson with prologues. Don't give lengthy origin stories to multiple characters. Linearity in the early game works to establish story beats and introduce main players, but once you open the world, open it for good. Eivor's story will begin in Norway, but we don't know how long it'll be before we cross the North Sea to England. I just hope that if there is a lengthier prologue, that we get some actual plot movement in it, something going on to get us hooked and interested. As far as modern day, we know that Layla will return. The more I play the older Assassin's Creed games, the more I realize it never feels good when the modern day plot is treated as an afterthought. Either go for it and fully embrace the Animus and how it links the present day characters to the past, or remove it completely, because we've seen time and time again that half-assing this part of the game only hurts both sides of the plot. This is something I also mentioned in my last video about how Valhalla is returning to the old Assassin's Creed, but it deserves further mention because, again, it's done so well. Assassin's Creed 3 weaves its assassin recruitment system into the main narrative instead of treating it like a side fare. Liberating the game's 6 districts reveals an assassin contact for each of them, a member of the community who stands up up to the British. They learn about the Templars from Connor, and upon clearing their district, they'll offer any help they can provide. It feeds into the idea of Connor as a leader, someone the Brotherhood desperately needs to fight back the Templars. As a side activity, this would have been enough for me, but UB gives these characters recurring roles in the main story. My favorite example is when they save Connor from being hanged, opening the window for us to assassinate Thomas Hickey and save George Washington. It's a moment that makes all the repetition of liberation missions worth it. And like the homestead feature, the context of the setting and historical events make perfect sense here too. Since the events of Rogue, the Brotherhood has fallen and the Templars have taken control. Connor needs to be a leader, and at the same time, he needs these citizens to step up if he's going to fight back. The care and attention given to the 6 recruits is worthy of praise. Valhalla will feature Yam's Vikings. We've talked about them many times before. We know that recruitment is central to the settlement's survival. We'll need allies Eivor can trust if we're going to establish a foothold in England. It'll be interesting to see how the system will be approached because, again, we haven't seen it in this form since Assassin's Creed 3, 8 years ago. It's difficult to speculate on what could be, but I will say that I hope Valhalla focuses on the depth of Eivor's recruits instead of the breadth. It was cool to see Ezio recruit so many citizens across Brotherhood, and it was even cooler to see mentor Ezio guide them further in Revelations. But it's hard to connect with those characters because they're randomly generated. They didn't participate in the main storyline. Assassin's Creed 3 gave us 6 characters with names, faces, and backstories. It was not perfect, but it's the most cohesive form of the system from my perspective. I hope what we've heard about Valhalla rings true, that we'll get to know these characters, interact with them over many hours, that they won't just disappear once we're done with them. In fact, it would be incredible if we see the Yams Vikings and settlement citizen systems kind of morph into one. I could see the very people that we're going into battle with also helping us in the settlement, you know, blacksmiths, tattoo parlors, armorers, stuff like that. All right, that was 5 things Valhalla can learn from Assassin's Creed 3. Once again, the big reveal is happening in less than 2 weeks, and you can expect me to cover everything we learn right here on the channel. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and follow me on social media to stay up to date. Check out my Discord server too if you want to talk more Assassin's Creed. Big thanks to my patrons Bill, Grass, Jackie, Spyro, Kamal, Tom, and Patrick. If you didn't know, I have a Patreon where you can support me further in exchange for exclusive updates and behind the scenes content. Check out the link in the description below for more information. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.